going to give it a few more seconds for YouTube and the stars to align with our computers, and then we have so much to tell you. So you're going to want to, hang out.
Be here. Yeah.
Okay. I think we're ready.
I think so.
This. Hey, everybody. Welcome to True Crime Paranormal. I'm Kristi Brower here with my co-host, Katie Weaver, and we are, of course, the Psychic Sisters.
Yeah.
So, hey, Katie, how are you?
I'm hot, man.
Yeah.
My house is 82 degrees. So, this is summer hair, don't care. And, it is what it is.
I gotta say, I'm so grateful for central air. I know I'm really spoiled to have that in Idaho because not everybody does, but it's so hot here right now.
It's a nightmare. And, we knew that today because how many times did the court we were watching today, court proceedings, have to take a recess to turn on the air conditioning and try and cool down that room?
Yeah, it was so hot in there. I think they can't run the air because it interferes with their audio.
Mm-hmm.
And so they turn it on, they take a break, turn the air on for a while, turn it down to 60 or whatever to try to cool it off as best they could. And then everybody go back in because they're all in masks. Well, not all of them, but some of them are in masks.
Mm-hmm.
The judge particularly was cooking well in that robe. I mean, I've always thought that looked really, really hot.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, we might as well jump right in. If you don't know what we are talking about, we are talking about day one of Chad Daybell's preliminary hearing. This it was from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. Mountain Standard Time. We have been connected to it all day. If you work with me, I promise I worked all day with this in the background. I got lots done. But I did also, pay attention to this because it was quite the day. So this is happening in St. Anthony, Idaho, in the Fremont County Courthouse. And this is Chad's preliminary hearing on the 2 felony charges he is facing that are the concealment and destruction of evidence that was about to be
discovered.
There we go. That's the word I'm looking for. Which really, literally, what we're talking about is the concealing and destruction of the bodies of Tylee Ryan and JJ Vallow.
Yeah.
So this was quite a day. We're just going to walk you all the way through everything that happened. There were definitely some real aha moments and some bombshells. One of the cool things about a preliminary hearing is that you start to see a little bit of the prosecution's hand. Not a lot. They limited their questions. They would just get to the point where you're like, oh man, we've been wanting to know. No, they didn't ask that question.
Yeah.
And it's very strategic. They're not going to give the defense anything they have to, that they can avoid giving them. So the whole point here is simply to prove to the judge that Chad should be held over for trial for these charges, which is not, it in a lot of ways, it's kind of a formality because the bodies were found on his property. It is not like it's a big secret.
Right.
But it is still a very important hearing and very important because his rights have to be respected. And so a lot of this has to do with making sure that the evidence collection has been done in a legal manner. And so there were tons of questions that seemed so pointless and repetitive today, but it really was confirming things like chain of evidence. And did they have the right warrants to search where they were searching? And did they have the right warrants to get the GPS information from Google? And it can be kind of tedious, but it's really important because if at any point the defense attorney could, try to get something thrown out and say, you can't count that because it was, collected illegally. Yeah. Fortunately, so far that has not happened. Although the bombshell at the end today
was pretty interesting. We'll get there.
Sure that defense attorney's going to have a lot to say about that tomorrow.
Oh, I'll bet Mark Means is peeing his pants right now trying to figure out how to get that thrown out of Lori's hearing next week.
Yeah. Wow.
That was bad. It was also funny, and we're going to tell you about it. But
it was. We will get there. But we started the hearing. Oh, yeah. Very contentious. And very much an experience all of us ex-Mormons have had. And so it may have not made a lot of sense to you, but it does make a lot of sense to us, and we will explain why. And we're going to actually do a whole episode on the phone call that happened at the end of today's hearing and break it all down for you. But today we're just going to give the basics so that you know what happened. Let's see. So Chad turned up at this hearing again wearing a white shirt and tie. He and his attorney kind of matched again, sort of blue
Mhm.
looking ties, which I thought was
Yeah.
really funny. They
Red
were
last
not wearing
time,
red
blue
last time, blue
today.
today.
Mhm.
Um, they were not wearing masks. There was
No.
some controversy about masks at the beginning that Mr. Pryor, the
Mhm.
defense attorney, said he couldn't hear if other people were wearing masks. And the judge was trying to balance the safety of everyone in the room with the
Yeah.
being able
Well,
to hear. And it was hard to hear.
it was, though Pryor thought that nobody would be able to hear him if he was wearing a mask.
You
He's
can't hear him
probably the
because
guy
he
that
won't sit up to the freaking microphone.
no.
He bitched the whole time that he could not hear every witness, and yet he was sitting back in his chair like this, talking.
Mhm.
Well, no one could hear him. It had nothing to do with masks, but,
No.
we're learning about him, and he wants to make a big stink about everything. That's what we're learning about.
Everything. Yeah.
And I know that
Well,
he's a defense attorney, that is his job, but yeah,
mhm. But,
he
oh,
is a pearl
man.
clutcher for sure.
Ooh, 30 minutes in, and you're like, "I could not hate this dude more," you
Yeah,
know?
yeah. Oh, yeah,
And
absolutely.
then you got towards the end of the day and you found out, yes, you could.
Yeah, you definitely
Yeah,
could, you definitely could, yeah.
yeah.
So the first witness called was Rexburg Police Detective Ray Hermosillo, which,
Mhm,
funnily enough, we went to high school with,
mhm,
and he has been on this case since JJ and Tyler were first reported missing. So he was one of the officers that went out for the welfare check in December when
mhm.
the word finally got to the Rexburg PD that, hey, we think some kids, at least a kid, if not two kids, are missing in your
Yeah,
community. I was really proud of Hermosillo. I felt like he did an excellent job reporting because he's been on this case for 8 months. It is a freaking
yeah.
lot of information to remember.
Oh,
And
man. Especially
prior
with
to
this case, as
yeah,
you guys know, all of
and
the twists and turns.
yeah,
Yikes. Yeah.
and Pryor just never quit trying to discredit him for not remembering the exact time something happened, which okay, Pryor, let's see if you remember because I'm 100% sure you won't.
One of my
Um,
favorite parts of that was when Pryor was hammering him about the school and
mhm,
what date he had been withdrawn from school.
mhm,
And or the last day that JJ had been at school, and
yeah.
Pryor tried to nail him down, and Hermosillo says, "Actually, sir, that's incorrect," and gave him the
Yeah,
correct information, and everyone cheered in their
yes,
hearts.
in their heart.
It
Yes,
was
we
so
all
great.
cheered as we were watching on our TVs at home.
Mhm,
So, they reviewed first the welfare check that happened on November 26th,
mhm,
the Detective Hermsier was there, and so he did talk about that. He talked about
mhm.
asking, Chad Daybell when he last saw JJ. He talked about talking to Alex Cox and about how evasive Chad and Alex were, sort of implying they didn't really know this Lori Vallow person, and at this point, Chad was married to her and Alex was her brother. So yeah, that was dumb.
Yeah, Alex
Um,
claimed to not know her phone number,
yes, Alex did
and
claim to not know her
Chad
phone number.
claimed to not really know her at all, just kinda
Yeah,
knew
he
who she
didn't really know
was.
her at all. It turns out he
Mhm.
was married to her. We did get a really interesting piece of information during, Hermosillo's, testimony in that they do know the exact date that Chad and Lori were married, and they are legally married in Hawaii.
Yes.
Were legally married in Hawaii, so they are legally
Mhm.
married. That has been a question all along because
Yeah.
Hawaii does not make their marriage certificates public.
Mhm.
And so there's been questions all along, and they were very evasive about what day it was and haven't really been
Yeah.
honest with anybody. It was November 5th.
Yep.
They have been married since November 5th, so they are in
Mhm.
fact married. Why they were evasive about that, I still
Yeah.
don't fully understand, other than that neither one of them can tell the truth if it smacked them straight in the face. So,
Right. Yeah.
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 So,
Well,
so
and then
they
later when they questioned Lori
mhm.
didn't seem to know Chad. She
Yeah.
said he was, I don't
Chad?
know, that was
Chad
probably
who?
my brother's friend. Yeah,
Yeah.
probably. Yeah, yeah. And this is what you guys, this was so chilling and crazy because this was in the body cam. So actually, I'm
Mhm.
jumping way ahead, but this was
Yeah,
in the body cam.
this isn't
This
in
isn't.
Hermosillo, so
But I'll
we'll
tell you
get there.
anyway, since, yeah, well, let's cover it since we're here on Chad and Lori and their lives. But
Yeah.
he
So yeah, go ahead.
so when they were, this was body cam, so it was later on, and we will
It
publish the
was
body cam stuff
Stubbs.
for you
It was
guys.
Stubbs.
Yeah, but she said she didn't know Chad. He was her brother's friend. Then she finally says his name is, I don't know, Chad Daybell. I don't know. He's like an author or something. And they're like, didn't his wife just die?
That name sounds familiar. Yeah.
That grabbed me.
I suspect it grabbed them too.
Yeah.
I suspect it grabbed them too. Of course, in this situation, they cannot give their opinions or their thoughts behind what happened. They can just report what they did. So, after the welfare check, they find out that JJ is in fact, they lied. She lies to JJ. Lori lies to the police, and they initially say that JJ is with his grandma, Kay Woodcock, which is exactly who reported JJ missing, of course. And so they know that isn't true. So then they get this big old runaround from Chad and Lori to contact their friend, Melanie Gibb, who they say is in Arizona, and she has JJ.
She has JJ, yeah.
So then they go through, trying to contact her. She doesn't respond. But they later determine in talking to her that Chad initially called her and said, "Hey, the Rexburg PDs are going to call you. Don't answer the phone." And then Lori contacted her and said, "Hey, they're going to contact you and want to know if you have JJ. Please just tell them you do. And here, take some pictures. Go to the movie theater and take some pictures and tell him that you're at Frozen 2 and that he's that he's running around with some other kids."
Yeah.
So they absolutely ask her to lie. She's pretty confused by this. Although at that time,
because Lori had already told her that she had relinquished JJ to Kay.
To Kay, yes, had told Kay that she had breast cancer and could no longer care for him and given him to Kay. That is what Melanie believed to be true. So they find out none of that is true, of course. And so they get a search warrant for these 3 townhouses that are on Pioneer Road, which is just a couple of miles from Katie's house.
Yeah.
For apartments 175, 174, and 107. And they can't stop lying about who lives in which apartment. They just can't get the truth out of anyone. And so they were rented by Lori Vallow, Alex Cox, and Melanie Boudreau. Now, interestingly, apartment 107 was empty. Didn't have anything in it.
Yeah.
In 175, they find some of JJ's belongings, a prescription with his name on it, a suitcase with his name on it. But the weird thing about in 175 is there's no clothing in the closets or dresser drawers. I said that was really strange because it appeared that people were living there in other ways, but there were no clothes in that house. But unit 107 that was supposedly Lori's apartment was empty.
Yeah.
So they serve these search warrants. They find, it's just all sketchy as hell. And so then they find out that there is a storage unit. So they get a search warrant for the storage unit. And this is all still Hermosillo talking because he was a part of all of this.
Yeah.
Goes to the storage unit. In there, they find old winter clothes and blankets. Things that should belong to children. There were blankets that were made that had family pictures on them.
Yeah, personalized.
Yeah, but like children's belongings and winter clothes were there. And this is in November in Idaho. Children would definitely be needing their winter clothes. But they were in a storage unit. Another bizarre thing.
Yeah.
So then as they continue through this process, Hermosillo talks to Colby Ryan, who is Tylee Ryan's older brother. And then they realize that, not only does no one know where JJ is, but no one knows where Tylee is either. Yeah. And they do show a photo that if you haven't seen it, I would be surprised because it's been around a bunch. It's a picture of JJ, Tylee, and Alex Cox at Yellowstone Park on September 8th, 2019. This is the last photo of Tylee alive.
Yeah.
They got it from Lori's iCloud account. So they start searching, they start getting the electronic warrants to get, search their phones and their, the iCloud accounts and that kind of thing. And they get a bunch of pictures, but they get to a point where there is no picture of Tylee past September 8th. They also find a picture of JJ sitting on a couch on September 22nd of 2019. Also the last picture of JJ living. So they've used these pictures to kind of estimate their times of death. They think that Tylee died around the 9th of September and that JJ died around the 22nd or 23rd of September.
Yep.
And this is where all of that came from.
Yeah.
So then in January, Hermosillo went to Kauai and served Lori Vallow with the child protection order, demanding that she produce her kids in Rexburg within 5 days of January 25th. So by January 30th, she was to show up in Rexburg either to the Department of Health and Welfare with her kids or to the police department. There was never any sign of JJ or Tylee in Hawaii when he was there. Yeah. And she did not show up. She violated that order, did not come. That was a really big deal here when it did happen. The Woodcocks were here. There was lots of press around. There were a bunch of things, happening in the area, but she never showed.
Yeah.
Nor did the children. We know why now. Then Hermosillo went back to Kauai in February and served Lori with an arrest warrant. That was on February 20th. She was arrested by the police there in Kauai. And that's when she first appeared in a courtroom. And he was there. Hermosillo was there. He did witness that Chad was also in the courtroom. And that's kind of where they moved. So, they're basically saying that Hermosillo as a detective was present in all of these events as a witness, as the police officer. I was there. I served the warrant. I did this. I did that. It's part of the procedure that they're proving. We did it all right. Here's the officer that was there through all of it who can tell you. So then they fast forward to June 9th. And June 9th is when Hermosillo was part of the group of law enforcement from three agencies who went to Chad's house in Fremont County to serve a search warrant. So Hermosillo was there when they served the search warrant, in which they actually excavated the backyard and found the bodies of the children. Hermosillo was present when the bodies were found. This was a particularly challenging part of the hearing to listen to. Because they were talking about pretty
was graphic. Yeah.
Pretty graphic things. And the sick part about it is that you should see Chad's face through all of it. Oh, he's just either
pretty nonplussed. Yeah.
Resting toad face is what I'm calling it, because he has this weird down frowny toady look on his face when he's like just got a neutral look on his face.
Yeah.
It was creepy. There was no remorse. There was no sadness. And, Hermosillo, kind of had to pause and take a breath a few times during sharing this, because he talked about working with the FBI ERT team and the cadaver dogs, and about the two areas in the backyard where they dug up a body. JJ, and another place where they dug up what he called burnt human tissue and bone. Yeah. And he said present with the burnt human tissue and bone was a green bucket that was melted, like it had been burned as well. And when they pulled that out, underneath was a partial human skull. Yeah. Now, what he's referring to is that this is what's left of Tylee's body. They had a really weird conversation through all of this about what it smelled like, which was really strange. And Hermosillo did say he has been around decomposing bodies many times in his career, and that, he recognized that smell immediately.
Well, Pryor. Go ahead.
Well, then Pryor gets into this whole thing about, but have you ever smelled human tissue and bone burning? Which is, I don't know, Pryor, have you? Like, it was really weird.
He must have, because he just kept saying.
He just wouldn't let it go. He was
distinctive smell.
Yes, a very distinctive. I think what he was trying to imply, without implying it, because he's not allowed to give evidence in this situation, is that if, in fact, that body was burned there, that the neighbors would have noticed the smell.
Right, which is ridiculous, because this is a rural area.
It's the very thing that you would say if you were a city person coming out to rural Fremont County.
Totally. This house is out in the country. People burn
Yeah.
things on their property all the time. They could have
Right.
been burning garbage. Some people don't have a garbage service. They burn their trash. You
Yeah.
could have been burning, you could have been burning your ditches. You could have been burning leaves and shit. You could have been
A
burning a
dead
dead
animal.
animal. You
Yeah.
could have been, uh, you guys hopefully have never had the experience of being present for branding cattle, but
Oh,
that's exactly what that smells like. But if
yes.
you're branding, everything smells like burning hair and flesh, and it's horrifying.
Right,
But
but people in
you
that
know,
community would not
they
have
wouldn't
thought that was
twice.
strange.
Not that you'd be branding in the fall, usually brand in the spring, but that's how they take the nubs off of goats. I mean, there's lots
Right.
of reasons why you would have smelled something like that that is completely normal
Yeah.
in a rural area like that.
Yeah.
It was a
He
non-argument.
It was a non-argument. He did a lot of this arguing, lots of procedural stuff, lots of objections. He lost most of them.
Yeah.
But this whole idea, well, he wanted to know if Detective Hermosillo had ever um, smelled that smell before.
Yeah.
And he said, not really, but I kind of, almost like he couldn't, he couldn't have possibly. He actually said, I'm just trying to get to how you know that that was burned flesh and bone, as though smelling it was the only way to know.
Yeah.
He was looking at it, and Hermosillo said, you couldn't smell the burn smell because all you could smell was decomp.
Yeah.
But it was a really bizarre conversation, a really unnecessarily graphic, like, what the
Mhm.
hell? You're the defense attorney. You want to make this worse for people? Like, this just makes people hate your
Well,
guy worse, you know? It
and
was really strange.
the woodcocks were sitting directly
Oh,
behind
God.
him.
They were, and it
They
was brutal.
It was brutal. There was a point during that time where Larry pulled his mask off. You could see him mouth the words, "That son of a bitch," and
Yep.
then cry and cry and cry. It was
Oh, it was
extremely hard on the Woodcocks today. It just broke everybody's hearts to witness that. It was awful.
so brutal because they had to
Mhm.
describe, and the reason they're describing the removal of the bodies and where they were placed, they were confirming chain of evidence, I believe. So they were,
Yeah.
they put him in the coroner's truck, and then the next day they drive from the coroner's truck to Ada County to Boise because we don't actually have a medical examiner here, and so we had to go Boise is 5 hours away
Mhm.
to take the bodies there, and so every officer that was present for that was, on the stand today, the prosecutor went through that process with each of them, basically just
Mhm.
confirming this. They followed chain of evidence that the bodies were never left in a way that they could have been tampered with,
Mhm.
that they were protected and held in the right custody the entire time.
Yeah.
But it was pretty brutal. The
It
other thing
was.
that was brutal was
Just
the
a
whole
note here
conversation.
quickly.
Mhm. Yeah.
I put up a picture of Detective Hermosillo so that you guys can
Oh,
see
yes.
who we're talking about. We'll try and
Mhm.
do that as we go since, this is a
And
very tangled web so that you
he
can
spent
put a
2
face
hours,
to a
more than 2
name.
hours on the stand.
More than 2 hour, 4 hours on the standish. It
It
was
was a long it was
and
half
he
the
held up
half the
really,
hearing.
really well. Yeah,
Gosh,
he
he sure
did.
did. He sure did. The one of the other really brutal conversations was about the pet cemetery.
Ugh.
So in finding the bodies of the children, they also located, the bodies of a dog and a cat, and there's
Mhm,
this, discussion that this family has had a pet
mhm,
cemetery in their backyard where they bury their animals after they pass away, and,
mhm,
basically making the defense attorney making Hermosillo say that, yes, he did find a cat and a dog buried there, and he did witness that. It's
mhm,
just brutal, like, it was just
mhm.
kinda mean and pointless. It was very strange.
Yeah, it was awful.
Yeah.
Awful, awful. And so I did share a picture here of woodcocks, and this is exactly the scene that we were describing with Larry.
Mhm. Oh my gosh, it was
Just
awful, and
gut-wrenching.
yeah, it was gut-wrenching to have to watch them listen to this and know that they're
Mhm.
referring to JJ, their grandson, and also Tylee, who they knew and cared about and was their niece,
Yeah,
It's just a horrible experience to have to go through that.
yeah.
Um, so Hermosillo did talk about going to Ada County and, with the bodies and being present when they were examined by the medical examiner. And what it looked like when they cut that black bag open and to find JJ inside, because he
Mhm.
was in, like, a black trash bag.
Yeah.
He said he was wearing red pajamas, shirt and pants, and Skechers socks,
Yeah.
And there was a blue and white blanket placed on top of him.
Mm-hmm.
But one of the things that was very strange, and I'm sure we're going to hear a lot more about this when we hear from the medical examiner on this case, was the amount of duct tape on JJ's body. He had duct tape on his head, his wrists and his ankles were bound, and then his hands were sort of crossed over his chest, and then there was duct tape wrapped round and round and round his body, many times around, holding his hands against his chest.
Mm-hmm.
And there was duct tape wrapped tightly from his chin to his forehead, several layers. Yeah. They did not go into why that is. They did not go into anything about what the medical examiner has to say about that, and that may not come out in this hearing. That may be something that comes out at trial. That's sort of where they stopped with what the medical examiner was doing, but I thought that was particularly disturbing.
I did too. Well, and he said remarkable amounts of duct tape. That's why.
Like layer after layer after layer. It was also kind of an indicator that it would probably take two people to do that. You think about that. How are you going to lift a body like that and put tape around it? To me, this is just my own assumption. It indicates more than one person being involved.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So then we get into Mr. Pryor questioning Hermosillo, in which he harps on the fact that Hermosillo did not have a body cam on when he talked to Chad and Alex that first day at the welfare check. Now, the thing you have to know is that body cams are not required in Idaho.
No.
And they're not required by Rexburg PD. Whether you think they should be or not, they aren't. They are voluntary, and we're going to get to that because another officer wears his everywhere he goes in every situation he's in. And so we do actually have body cam of most of this because he was present. But Hermosillo did not have a body cam on. He said it did not seem to warrant it at the time because at the time this was a welfare check.
Well, and Pryor said, "Don't you think this was a pretty significant case?" At the time, it was just a welfare check.
Right. So, this was before they had any idea. Yeah.
Dumbass. It wasn't.
Later on,
not at the time. Not not at all.
Yeah. That went on. He harped on that a whole bunch.
Oh, he hammered on that. He testified himself on that until Wood had absolutely had enough of him.
Yeah. Then they did have the conversation about JJ's school and when he was last seen at school, which was September 23rd. Was the last time they believe this is the last time that he was at school. There was this whole conversation about how if Hermosillo had never met JJ or Tylee, how he could identify them, and he talked about how he has seen hundreds of videos and pictures of them, and that he would know them anywhere because of everything that he's seen and watched.
Yeah.
Let's see, and we don't have to get into all of Pryor's objections because it was just
so many objections. Every time he wanted to approach, the judge didn't want them to approach because they can't hear, and they're going to have to yell at each other through the barrier between them and the judge. And when they approach, that isn't stuff that the press is supposed to get to hear. So every time they would approach, they would have to sidebar in the judge's quarters and then come back over and over again. And Pryor would be like, "Your Honor, do we need to have another sidebar?"
Yeah. He was like, again, really. So they took a lunch break, and after the lunch break, they called Lieutenant Ron Ball to the stand. Lieutenant Ron Ball has been with the Rexburg PD for nearly my entire life.
Years.
Really long time. I certainly know who he is and familiar with his name.
Mars played softball with his daughter for years.
Yeah.
In their family for a long time.
Yeah. So he also was present when the remains of the children were found. He also went to Ada County for the autopsies. It's just another step of here's another officer present. Here's another person confirming chain of command or chain of evidence. He wasn't on the stand for very long. It was just kind of he was there to confirm all that same stuff because he is one step above Hermosillo.
Right, he's a lieutenant. Yeah,
he's a lieutenant.
Well, he's also graduated from, I'm going to say this wrong, but I'm going to say FBI Academy, which is probably incorrect, but he's gone to all of the work to actually be an FBI agent, but has chosen to stay at Rexburg on the RPD because this is actually where he wants to be. But, this guy is very well educated and seasoned.
Yeah. Okay, so then they call Police Detective David Stubbs to the stand. So he
Mhm.
has been with the Rexburg Police Department for 25 years.
Yeah.
He's the technology and internet crimes against children guy for Rexburg PD.
Mhm.
And so he got first involved in the case when he was asked to locate a vehicle that police in Arizona were interested in. So one of the vehicles that had belonged probably to Charles Vallow or Lori.
Mhm.
Um, and so that's when he got involved. So this is the part of the hearing that gets really tedious and boring.
Oh,
And so
boy.
I will just explain. I'm not going to go through everything he did because it's so hard. But basically, what's happened is that they used GPS from Alex Cox's phone to find the children and to determine, when and where they discovered in going through his GPS that he had spent a fairly significant amount of time in Chad Daybell's backyard.
Mhm.
And of course, that was suspicious. And so
Yeah.
this was all very procedural about all of the what did they say? It's like 780-page report from Google
Something like
on
that.
their satellite data, on their GPS data for
Mhm.
the, time frame that they asked for on Alex Cox's phone. They didn't get into Chad and Lori's phones, but I suspect that that's coming.
Mhm.
Um, but basically, they were talking about on the days that they believe that the children were buried, they can show that Alex was present in Chad's backyard for
Mhm.
significant amounts of time, hours at a time. So
Mhm.
this took a huge amount of time, basically just to prove. And a lot of it was, some of it was about, showing the GPS map of the townhouse complex where Lori and Alex were living, and then when his movements and when he went certain places, including Chad's backyard on the days that they believed the kids were buried.
Yeah.
So that went on for a long time. And it was a lot about just proving that they had done it correctly and legally
Mhm.
because accessing your GPS information is a really big deal. You can't
Right.
violate people's rights about that.
No.
But,
And,
but
Alex's, email address was what?
you
His
say it.
username? Homer
You say
J.
it.
Maximus. Yeah.
Yeah.
They weren't even they in open
They
court.
said it like 25 times.
The prosecutor keeps
Homer
saying,
J.
Homer
Maximus.
J. Maximus's account, Homer J. Maximus's device. Oh my god, that killed me. That
That
was
was way
funny.
funny. Yeah.
Mhm.
So they talked a lot about that. Then they did
Mhm.
talk about because Stubbs wears a body cam all the time.
Mhm.
He feels like it's the best um, thing to do. It's his personal choice because his department doesn't require it, but he does. And
Mhm.
so he did have body cam footage of some things that no one else had.
Yeah.
Um, well, I guess that's not true. Ball had some body cam footage as well.
Mhm.
But Stubbs, it's his personal policy to always
Mhm.
wear body cam footage. And so he
Yeah.
has body cam footage
Mhm.
um, talking with Chad Daybell. And, there's some footage that they didn't actually show
Lori.
that footage. Well,
No,
was
we
I
weren't allowed
thought
to
that was
see it. We were only allowed
wasn't
to
that
hear
Ball,
it.
though? I thought that was Ball that we saw with Lori, not Stubbs.
No, it was
'Cause
Stubbs. It
was
was
it Stubbs?
Stubbs.
Okay.
Mhm. It was
So this
Stubbs.
this was, this was really interesting. Do you wanna describe it, Katie? Kind of because we didn't get to
Well,
watch it, we only got to hear it.
right, we could only hear it. So basically, Stubbs and I believe Hermosillo went to the door
Mhm.
and or this was later, so it might not have been Hermosillo, it might have been Hope. But anyway, Stubbs and somebody went to the door, to double check with Lori what's going on here, right? But to finally make contact with Lori, right?
Mhm.
Because they had only made contact with her brother and her husband who, didn't actually know her
Mhm.
weirdly. So
Had no idea. Yeah.
they knock on the door. So Lori is this paranoid, trying to be a ball of sunshine, flirty, you know, happy little beauty queen. That's how, I think Lori's gotten a lot of her, gotten her way quite a lot. But at any
Ugh.
rate,
Yeah.
and they kind of, I don't know, they bought into it a little, I thought, but maybe
A
just in
little.
their, politeness. But anyhow, they basically, they're asking her, we're doing a welfare check on JJ. And she, of course, says that he is in Utah or in Arizona with Melanie Gibb. She tells them that she's in hiding because her brother
Yes.
is trying to kill her.
Yes.
Now that was
Not the one
that's
that's there with her because he's her protector, but a
mhm,
different brother.
This brother is my protector. It's a different brother. Well, there's only one other brother, and that's Adam Cox. She says he has been in Rexburg pounding on her door, that he was colluding with her husband to cash out on a big life insurance policy that her husband had on her, and they were going to kill her together and then cash out on that policy. But,
she's too dumb. She told her own story.
Right? The gaslighting's so crazy, that was the story she told. Anyway, and they were literally like, "Well, do you need protection? Like, do we need to come help out? Like, what do you need?" And she's like, yeah. "Oh, no, I think it's all fine now." But she also told him a big tale about how, Kay Vallow was trying to steal JJ from her, and JJ is her son. And it was something to behold. We will publish that, the audio of it, not in this, obviously we're live. We just you can't do it all at once, but we will publish that because honestly, you guys, if you didn't already hear it, you will be freaking dumbfounded.
It really gives you a great picture into Lori's personality and how she's gotten away with so much crap.
Yeah.
Because she's she's attempting to be, and I guess we just don't have the same response because we know what she's done, and also probably because we're women. But these women that they're just always in trouble, and someone's always picking on them. And Mr. Officer, it's not me. I'm a good person, but everyone's mean to me. It's that
she
kind
literally
of shit.
said, "I'm a good person. I'm a good mother that has done everything for my children and done everything I was supposed to do." She literally said that.
She did. And keep in mind, this is in November. Her children have been dead for 2 months when she's saying all of this.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just crazy. And all the horrible things she said about Kay Woodcock. This happened several times in this hearing where Lori's reports of how horrible Kay Woodcock is were, being said in a room with Kay Woodcock there. And I found that really, that was painful to watch and so unfair because frankly, I still don't know if we'd know if these kids were missing if it weren't for Kay and Larry Woodcock. They were the ones who gave a damn and finally started talking to the police and saying, "We don't know where these kids are." And it was really sad because she talked a lot about what a terrible person Kay is and how Kay's doing all these terrible things to her. And it was really sad. It just, shout out to Kay and Larry for everything that they have done because their treatment in this has been incredibly unfair.
Oh, so much. And as I was listening to that, my heart just really melted for Kay went out to Kay because I thought, even though we know that what happened to these kids was the fault of Lori, Chad, and Alex, there has to be a tiny little itty bitty bit of guilt in her that goes, did I do something? Could I have done something different? There is. I know there is because I've worked with people for a million years now that are going through death, and people will find a way to make themselves guilty. And I hope that Kay can find total peace here. She did not cause this. This was not her fault in any way whatsoever. But there's that part of you that's going to go, did I do something wrong? Did I cause this? And Kay did not.
Or did I not do enough? Or had I called the police sooner or whatever? But, no one knew this was going to be the outcome or they would have, none of this would have happened. But that was tough to take. And it was tough because it was so flippant and cute and, and her kids are dead. She has participated in the death of her 2 children. They have been buried in her husband's backyard for more than 2 months. And this is how she's speaking to the police. It was horrifying.
It was well, and just even though, we all have our own little, diagnoses and labels that we want to slap on Lori, to hear it, to hear that level of whatever you want to call her, lying to their faces and the way she was portraying herself as this damsel in distress.
Oh, yeah.
It's pretty freaking amazing.
Yeah. Just so flippant. It was really tough. Yeah. Yes. So that was Stubbs on the stand. And then we had a very brief visit from Wynn Hill. And Wynn Hill is the Dean of Students for BYU-Idaho, which is the university in Rexburg. One of the things that had been reported to Melanie Gibb, as well as other people, is that Tylee wasn't at home because Tylee was going to BYU-Idaho and she was living in the dorms and she was off with her friends and there were all these lies. So they brought in Wynn Hill because in February they had Windhill go through and search all of their records. So they searched applications, current students, past students, everything for Tylee Ryan, Tylee Cox, and Tylee Vallow. So they wanted to try different last names just to be sure. Absolutely, has there not ever even been an application to attend BYU-Idaho from Tylee? And they did use her birth date, 9/24 of 2002. So they're,
which
they
makes
just
sense because Tylee wasn't even old enough to live on campus. She could have attended BYU-Idaho and lived at home, but she wasn't even old enough to live on on campus and in the dorm. She was 16 years old.
She was 16 years old when she died. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that was really brief. But I think just furthering the, here's more lying going on about where these children are.
Yeah.
And proof of that. So then a weird thing happened. I think it was first it sort of sucked the air out of the room.
Yeah.
And so the next witness for the prosecutor was to be Melanie Gibb. And Katie and I are messaging each other like, oh, it's getting good now. Like, this is it. Because Melanie Gibb was Lori's best friend. Melanie Gibb is the person that Lori and Chad asked to lie to the police about Tylee or about JJ's location. Melanie Gibb has given some very extensive interviews to the police as well as to the media, our local media, about what she knows about this situation. Melanie Gibb is definitely an on the inside of the situation person. And I don't mean culpable as in she was involved in the kids' deaths, but on the inside as far as the Chad and Lori cult, crazy religious stuff. She was very much involved with that. She also was well aware that Chad and Lori were having an affair.
Oh, yeah. She spent lots of time with them. Yeah, while they were cheating on their spouses.
Yes, she was well aware of all of that. So they call her to the stand, and then nothing happens, and she doesn't come in the courtroom. And then after a few minutes of waiting, you see the prosecutor and his assistant they're all talking, and then the prosecutor asks for a recess. And so we have a 15-minute recess. And that was a really weird moment. Like, what the hell? Did she not show up? Is she refusing to testify?
Did she have a panic attack? Was she, what happened?
In the bathroom throwing up, what's going on? Because this is a big witness. This is a big witness. And like you said, Katie, that it was the first time you really saw any emotion out of Chad or any reaction out of Chad at all when he said her name. And
suddenly Chad had color in his face, and he'd gone through this entire day just as pasty and white as he always is.
Oh, yeah.
And it was getting hot in there. Everyone else
face, like always.
Sweating. Yeah, and he was just, sitting there with that bullfrog face with no emotion at all. And suddenly they say Melanie Gibb's name. His face is red. He's got his hands up here, kind of up like this around his face. Totally different Chad all of a sudden. Here he is.
Yeah, then there was, because, I don't want to use the term she knows where the bodies are buried because I don't think she did, but kind of like that. Yeah. She knew some stuff. So 15-minute recess ends. They call Melanie Gibb to the stand, and she comes walking in and walks up to the stand. So we don't know at this point why she didn't initially. But that was a really like, oh my God moment.
Yeah.
So they were specifically asking her about her visit to Rexburg on September 19th through September 23rd.
Yeah.
So she says that she came to see Lori and attend a conference. Now, this is big because we have known for a while or had some intel that there was a conference that weekend, and that's why she was here and may have brought some other people in this, shall we call it, wackadoodle cult into our community.
Yeah.
And this was finally confirmed in her statement. So I was like, oh my God, Katie, we knew it.
We knew it. We've just been waiting to, be able to say it and confirm it. So the conference was held at Madison Middle School. Why was the conference held at Madison Middle School?
Good damn question.
Well, we'll tell you why.
Yes, we will.
Some of you guys will recognize the name Jason Mao, right? Or Mao. I think it's Mao. Jason Mao is another friend of Chad and Lori's. He was a podcaster. He's written books. He was the guy who was in the movie about the zombie children. If you might recall us talking about that horrifying
Right.
thing.
Yeah.
Well, Jason Mao has a sister in Rexburg whose husband is the principal of Madison Middle School. Their last name is Bone.
Yeah.
And so here comes one of these groups, and they use Madison Middle School, which I think is very odd.
Really wonder if the school district knew about that, because this was a religious meeting called Firm Foundation. And it was, I'll just read this so that you can. It was the 24th International Book of Mormon Evidence Conference. And if you don't know, which, hello, that is the funniest thing I've ever heard in my life. Evidence, yeah, sure.
Yeah.
So if you don't know, the Book of Mormon is a scriptural book that Mormons use. So this event was held in 3 different locations, one of which was Rexburg at the Madison Middle School, and they even published the name of the school and the address, which I really think someone probably ought to call up the school district office and say, "Hey, did you know that the junior high principal is using your school on weekends for religious events?" Because I'll bet you $100 they're not supposed to do that.
Probably not, but in this town, I'm sure it's happened lots and lots of times.
It probably has, but it's wrong on many levels. Also, it just was a confirmation to us about why was Melanie Gibb here that weekend.
Yeah. Yeah. Now we know.
Now we know.
For a conference.
It
we
was
have been beating the pavement looking for a Preparing the People conference here that weekend because we knew there was a conference. Turns out there was a conference. It wasn't a Preparing the People conference. It was something else.
It was something else. But yeah, because it is rather interesting, why were they here this particular weekend? Because this is the same time period in which it is believed that JJ was killed.
Yes.
The last evidence of his life, proof of life, was on September 22nd. Melanie Gibb left the morning of September 23rd.
Yep.
The last that she saw JJ was Alex Cox bringing him into the townhouse, carrying him
asleep on his shoulder.
No way of knowing if he's asleep or not. But that was very interesting. So, Melanie goes on to talk about her experiences with Chad and Lori, asking them to lie to the police. Don't answer the police's calls or lie and say that JJ is with you. This is when Melanie gets very confused about, you told me that she's with Kay, that you were going to tell Kay you have breast cancer so that you can, give him to her. And so she did talk about that and confirm the things that the police had already said had occurred, that she did talk to the police in Gilbert, Arizona, which is where she's from. So she didn't talk to the Rexburg PD but at that time, but she did talk to an officer in Gilbert.
And when the prosecutor asked her why she didn't talk to the Rexburg PD, she said, because Chad told me not to.
Yes, because Chad told me not to. Now, a very interesting thing about all of this with Melanie is that the way that the seating is in the witness, the judge called it the witness cubicle because it's surrounded by plexiglass right now. The way that she's seated in her chair and facing the microphone so they can hear her, she's looking at the prosecutor.
Has her chair angled. Yeah.
Yeah. And you can't really change that because of the way that it's all set up. But the defense attorney at one point kind of accused her of putting all of her attention on the prosecutor and not looking over the other way. It did seem quite obvious she was trying not to look at Chad, and who would want to?
The judge told her he needed her to turn her chair. She literally turned her back to the judge, like looking into the corner, and he was like, "No, the other way." Yes, Melanie. The judge wanted you to turn your back to the prosecutor. That's what we were asking for.
Right.
Okay.
She kind of turned toward him for a minute and really didn't and just kind of went back to what she was doing. But it seemed a little bit to me like Pryor was trying to intimidate her by trying to make her turn and look toward them, because it was quite clear that she did not want to even look at Chad.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So this is when a lot more of the Kay bashing came out and the things that she reported that she was told by Lori. Now, I find all of this really interesting because every bit of what Melanie said is hearsay. She was reporting what Lori and Chad said to her, and the defense attorney did not object to anything that she said. Did you find that weird?
I thought it was crazy because he had bitched about hearsay all day long.
He had with the police officers, that the police officers couldn't say things.
Right. He tried to say that Detective Hermosillo couldn't answer a question that the prosecutor asked him about his own experience because it was hearsay. And the prosecutor's like, I'm asking him a question about his own experience. How in the world could that be hearsay? Like, that was on the tip of his tongue all day. Yet Melanie Gibb gets on the stand and nothing.
Yeah. It was really, really, really strange. And so the whole time I kept thinking, this is all hearsay, and she's just spouting it, and he is not stopping. He's not saying anything, which really makes me wonder what's going to happen tomorrow. So she says some things like, Lori told me that she'd received emails from Kay that said, it's not like I'm going to kidnap them about the kids, and that she was just trying to protect JJ from Kay and possibly other family members, that there were other family members that also wanted him. This kid was 6, okay, or 7. Let's just be real.
But, because Adam was also going to kill her, as don't you know? Yeah.
Yeah. Yes. Because Adam was also going to kill her. So there was all this really paranoid stuff. She implied, or didn't imply, but actually said that Lori told her that the Rexburg police were in cahoots with Kay.
Yeah.
And that's why she couldn't talk to the Rexburg police. So that's why she spoke to the officer in Gilbert, Arizona instead, because she didn't dare talk to the Rexburg police. Yeah. And she said she was feeling so confused because these people are supposed to be my friends, and why are they lying to the police and involving me in this, and where is their kid? So she does admit that originally she lied to the Gilbert police. She told them that JJ had been with her.
Oh, Gilbert, yeah.
Yeah, Gilbert police. JJ had been with her, and that then she had given him back to his mother, that Lori had taken him back. So then a few days later, she calls back to this same officer, Officer Pillar in Gilbert PD, and says, I need to tell you that I lied to you. I didn't ever have JJ. My friends asked me to lie, and I've been really confused, and I don't know what to do. So then they say, Prosecutor Wood says that they have a CD containing a phone call. So what happened is Melanie set up a plan to call and record Chad and Lori having this conversation with Melanie. She recorded it. She says no one asked her to. She didn't do it on behalf of the police or anyone that but she tells this Officer Pillar at Gilbert PD, I have this. I want to give it to you. So then, just as like the most climactic things of this hearing are about to happen, something goes wrong, like that happened with Melanie. So then they go to play the call and can't. They have some problems, so they have to take a 15-minute. They have to take a 15-minute recess. So of course, the whole time you're like, "Oh my God, is this like the bombshell? What is on this call?" So they come back, from the. And we're going to break this call down completely in another show, but we will talk about some of it today. So they come back from the recess and they play this call, and it's fairly long, and it is very clear. You can absolutely hear everything. So I'm going to just give you some notes about it. So Melanie basically says, she's on. Oh wait,
you got to start with how Chad answers the phone.
I forget what.
Sweet Melanie.
Oh yes, that's
Hello,
right.
Sweet Melanie. That is
it was
such a typical patriarchal Mormon-y Don't want to offend our Mormon friends, but seriously, I mean, I think we can all agree, that's how women continue to be put in their place. Hello,
yes, reminded.
Melanie. Yeah,
yes. It was creepy. So then he puts her on speakerphone with Lori. And Melanie just kind of jumps right in, like, "Hey, I'm worried about you guys. I'm worried about what's going on here. Can you explain to me what's going on? Why did you ask me to do that with the police? Where is JJ? Where are you?" Yes, she starts with, "Where are you?" Which I thought was interesting because she knows this call is being recorded, and at this point they don't.
Right.
Although
and they
they
won't tell
figure
her.
it out.
Yeah.
Yeah, they don't really tell her. They're kind of vague.
Near Idaho. I mean, they're in Hawaii at this point, but they tell her near Idaho.
Near Idaho, yeah. So she's kinda trying to get some information for the police, but I was very proud of her. She really held her own with them about, "Hey, I'm worried about you, and I think you're doing some stuff you shouldn't be doing," and really got very, "Okay, if you are an ex-Mormon, or even if you are a Mormon, you have probably had this experience where someone comes to you and says, 'I'm worried about you.
Yes.
I'm worried about your salvation, and I would like to share a scripture with you.'"
Yep.
That was like, "Oh, God." Yeah, so we've all been there. If it seemed weird, if you heard this and it seemed weird, the way that they spoke to each other, it's not weird for Mormons at all.
No,
They were challenging each other, and
devolved
they
into a religious pissing
like
match.
a scripture challenge kind of pissing match, which was really funny, but just wild. Like, basically, Melanie was saying, "You have fallen off the path." She said, "You've been deceived. You're being deceived by Satan, and the stuff that you're doing isn't okay," and
she called them a name that most of you guys you might not have even caught this, or if you did, you probably don't know what this name is, but it really, really offended Lori.
Yes.
The name is Korihor.
Yes.
Korihor. Korihor.
Really, Melanie? Korihor?
You're going to go there? Korihor? Yeah. Well, Korihor is an antichrist in the Book of Mormon, in the Book of Alma. And that Korihor demanded a sign from God as proof of his existence, and God struck him dumb. And man, did it offend Lori to be called Korihor. Holy cats.
Oh, really bad.
Did not like
really
that. Yes.
They had a conversation about how Lori has wrested the scriptures. The idea is that she's wrestled them into fitting her own narrative. And that she's gotten involved in some dark junk and opening dark portals. If you know, portals are kind of a big thing with these guys. She said over and over again, Lori said over and over again, "It just wouldn't be good for JJ for me to tell you where he is. That's just not what's safe for him. And he is perfectly fine, and you don't need to worry." And
the
happy.
way she said it was so telling. She said, he is safe and he's happy. Ooh, that is he's in a better place now. That sounded so familiar. Yeah.
It did. It just almost sounded like code.
Yeah, it
did. One of the things that Melanie brought up is that I spoke to your brother Alex, and I asked him where JJ is, and he told me, "You don't want to know where JJ is." And she said,
and that
"What does that
ever
mean?"
be found.
And that he won't ever be found. And Melanie said, "Lori, what does that mean?" "Oh, well, he's fine. He's just safe." And you don't want to know because that could put you in danger. Then there was this implying that it would put, and Melanie kept going back at them. "How will it put me in danger to know where he is? I don't understand. What do you mean?" She really stayed very rational through the whole thing.
She did.
I felt like
Chad jumped in.
Oh,
You just don't know what we are up against, Melanie. No more sweet Melanie. You don't know what we're up against, Melanie. The way he said her name, he kept saying it in that really condescending tone. He didn't manage to shame her, though. He really didn't. She held to the course. I was more impressed with her today than I have been at all, really. But he said, "My own sister-in-law is trying to stir up a bunch of theories about Tammy's death and somehow blame me," which is totally accurate. Some of his family members, I don't know who, but some of his family members absolutely have said that they thought from the beginning when Tammy died. And then he started some big whole tale about how Tammy has been getting sicker and sicker and weaker and refused to go to the doctor. And we knew it was coming. None of that
She's
is true.
fading, she's been fading.
She's
She
been
was
fading.
49 years old. That is
And was
something to say about
training
somebody who's 85,
Yeah,
like, come on.
and was training for some kind of a triathlon or a
Yeah,
marathon or something. This
yeah,
person was not fading in any way, but that's
no,
the tale he cooked up for Melanie. They tried over and over again to gaslight her. Lori said to her, "Everything I have done is because the Lord told me so, and you are welcome to check in with the Lord and verify that."
yeah.
Yeah.
And then she got into all of their prophetic stuff and all of their experiences that they've been having, supposedly talking to Christ and all that stuff, and about how no one has witnessed any of it. They've not been able to prove it to anybody else, and I don't know, they got into a bunch of sort of doctrinal, things, but it was
Mhm.
interesting because I think this is the first time ever maybe that, one of their followers had challenged them. Boy,
They
it
were
had their
shocked.
hackles up. They couldn't believe it. Yeah.
Oh, Lori said repeatedly, "I would have never expected this out of you.
Yes. Yeah.
I love you.
Yeah.
I
She
love
kept
you,
saying
and
that.
I would
I
never expect this out of you." Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And just if Melanie would say, "I things seem to be going wrong with you. This you just don't seem like yourself." She would say, "Really? Because I think you don't seem like yourself." And it was just this
Mhm.
get back crap that went on for a long time. And then, she said Lori kept saying that JJ was protected and that she is protected by Jesus and that nothing bad will ever happen to her or her children,
Mhm.
which was really icky
Mhm.
considering that this conversation happened long after the children were dead, just
Yeah. Well, and Melanie, he is returning really soon. Christ is coming really soon,
yes,
and we're all
right.
going to stand right there and witness it together, and you'll know, and we'll all
Yeah,
know because he's coming really soon.
yeah,
Very
and then
matter of
you will
fact.
know what
Yeah.
where you screwed up here, Melanie.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Melanie tried to say, "You can understand my concerns here, can't you?" And
Yeah.
so then no, they couldn't.
Mhm.
Then they kept saying that her boyfriend, was putting all these thoughts in her head and all this stuff. It was
That
terrible.
was interesting. You
Mm,
have changed. You
yeah,
have changed. Who is putting these thoughts in your head? It's David, isn't it?
yeah,
Yeah, it was like all of a sudden their little kid sister that they'd been patting on the head and taking along for the ride wasn't
yeah,
listening to them anymore, and they couldn't believe it.
yeah.
Yeah.
So then the call ended really abruptly, like, obviously, Lori hung up,
Mhm.
but she said she was standing with Jesus Christ, and then she hung up the phone.
Mhm.
Very interesting also because, this is the only thing that isn't hearsay that
Right.
Melanie had, really, because
Mhm.
this is recorded and all 3 people were on the phone,
Mhm.
and, they were very clearly the people in question here.
Mhm.
Um, this was with only 10 minutes left in the hearing, and so Mr. Pryor
Mhm.
said that there was no way he could get to all of his questions to cross-examine Melanie, today, and so that will be what we start with tomorrow.
Yeah.
I just am so confused about where Pryor is going with this because, first of all, I he didn't object to any of the hearsay,
Mhm.
could have, didn't,
Well, he
um,
did throughout the whole rest of the hearing
except
until we
on this
got
thing.
here. He didn't object to this piece of evidence,
Yeah,
which, wasn't recorded or, created in a way that there were any witnesses except for Melanie and David and Chad and Lori.
right.
There could have been some objections perhaps, maybe, but
There could have been.
there was
Idaho
nothing.
is a single, party consent call state. So in
Mhm.
Idaho, you can make a call like this and it is legal. Not every
Right.
state allows that. In some states, and
Yeah.
this call was made Melanie was in Utah when she made
Mhm.
this call to
Yeah.
people in Idaho, and I don't know what,
Well, no, to
Utah's
people
law
in
is.
Hawaii.
Oh, in Hawaii,
In
that's right.
Hawaii.
She thought
Yeah.
they were in Idaho or maybe.
Yeah.
But in Hawaii, so I don't know if that will come to play, but
Maybe.
if it did, I would think this would have been, there would have been an objection before it played.
You'd think so. One good
Yeah,
point that one of our listeners made, academic aunt said, Lori said twice something about maybe Mel was recording it for the police, and indeed she did.
she
I
did,
don't know why you're
yes.
being so contentious with us unless you are recording this for the police. Yep, she did say that.
She did, yes, but then she continued on, I mean, it didn't stop
Yeah.
her. I mean, she
Mm-mm.
talked for quite a lot longer after she said that,
Mhm.
so I don't know, but that was a
Yeah.
pretty, uh, tense way to end the meeting
Well,
because
and how do you think
we
Melanie feels tonight knowing First of all, obviously, it scared the shit out of her to go in that courtroom today. Of course it
Yeah.
did. And the way Chad was burning holes in her with his eyes during her testimony was pretty intense.
Oh, yeah.
And he did it the whole time. But at any rate, so not only did she have to come and do this today, she has to come back in the morning and face Pryor. And Pryor was a flaming asshole today. I can't even imagine what tomorrow is going to be like.
And that was with police officers. I mean, that's with the people who are used to defense attorneys. Yeah, I feel for Melanie. I am also proud of her because this was a brave thing to do.
Yeah.
Considering truly in the past what a follower she was of Chad and Lori, to come out against them and to have recorded them and gotten all of this. I mean, it doesn't prove that they killed the children. They do very clearly admit to the asking her to lie, though.
Yeah.
It's most 100% in there. So,
oh yeah, totally. And I'll be honest, I've been a little disgusted with her. And right now I feel like all I want to do is lift her up and fortify her and, stand behind her.
I feel like she has only been able to say parts of what she knows because she has agreed with the police that she won't release everything she knows until it comes to these kinds of hearings. And you can see it because in her other in her interview, the 3-part interview that East Idaho News did with her with Nate Eaton, she didn't release a lot of this. This wasn't all in there. And it did seem like she was kind of hedging, but I think this is why.
I think so too. So some interesting things. I mean, this hearing was scheduled to last 2 days.
Yeah.
I'm very curious to see if it actually does, considering how much time was spent today.
They get through only 5 witnesses.
And there are a lot of witnesses. And the constant breaks to run the AC. And, there was a lot of recesses today. There were tech issues twice. There was, it'll be interesting to see. I really seriously wonder if this is going to go more than 2 days at this point.
It could quite easily. I think.
So the other interesting thing, of course, is that that Mark Means, Lori's attorney, is watching the whole thing with bated breath. He's probably, filled an entire journal today with all of what's gone down, because all of this evidence is basically the same stuff that's going to be said next week at Lori's hearing. Not all exactly, but pretty close,
Pretty close.
So what's going to happen? It's possible that Lori and Mark Means decide to waive their preliminary. They could if they wanted to. I don't know that they will, but they could. But he's getting a really good peek into what's coming because it's all on the table right now.
Right.
That'll be interesting too, to see what happens there.
And it was interesting. Pryor tried several times to ask the police officers questions that he's not allowed to ask. He was pushing to get more information, more of what they know. And boy, Woods was all over that. He was not allowing that for 1 second because they don't have to show their whole hand at this hearing. They only have to show a little, just enough evidence to hold him over for trial. They don't have to give the whole story. And you could see Pryor trying to get more several times, but he was not successful.
He absolutely. Well, and Woods was a rock star in court today. He was. He had a couple of people behind him and a person to the side of him that were all part of his team, and they were helping. And in fact, the gentleman with him, whose name I actually didn't catch, she's actually the one that questioned. Was it Rammel? Actually questioned the dean.
The dean student.
So he had his team there. He did a really, really good job. I was impressed with him a lot. One moment with Pryor that again made me go, "You are just too much ick for me." He motioned to the court reporter and said, "I can see I'm going too fast for you. I'm going to slow down. I saw you put your hand up and give me the motion. I'm going too fast. I'm going to slow down for you." It was so gross. I just wanted someone to get to say, "You're gross. You assault women, and you don't get to talk to another female in this courthouse today." Of course they can't, but really, ooh, he is so icky.
But we can think it, right? Yeah, he is quite icky, and he is, as most defense attorneys are, they fight everything down to the most minute detail, and he did that several times, right up until Melanie got on the stand, and then he didn't say a damn word. So I'm dying to hear what he has to say tomorrow.
That'll be interesting. Also, mad props to Fremont County. They are doing absolutely their best. They are, they're handling this the best they can. I was impressed this morning when I was at the courthouse that 2 of the officers that were, directing traffic and that were, keeping the area that Chad would walk through blocked off were female, and the bailiff was female. And in other areas that might not be that big of a deal, but Rexburg frequently has no female cops, and I mean, there are very few female police officers in our area. So to see 3 of them, representing Fremont County today, I was really impressed with that.
Yeah, I was too, and you just have to understand what a tiny little town this is, what a tiny little court this is. They don't handle stuff like this at all.
No.
They don't have to deal with press and, all the stuff they've had to deal with in this situation, so I agree. Mad
Mhm.
props to them. They've done a great job.
Yeah, absolutely. Hope it continues.
Yeah.
They're working hard and obviously taking some cues, I think, from bigger kids. I mean, tomorrow we're going to
Mhm.
hear from 3 different FBI agents that were subpoenaed, or at least we think it's tomorrow.
Yeah.
There's still a lot to come.
There's still a lot to come. So,
Mhm,
don't worry, we will be back tomorrow night with our update on what
mhm,
happens in day 2, and we will be working on some specific things, some of the stuff that came out today, particularly that phone call between Melanie, Chad, and Lori. We wanna
mhm,
break that down for you, particularly if you don't have any familiarity with Mormon doctrine and
mhm,
Mormon culture. That call might have been Greek to you, and so we wanna share that,
probably.
so we're gonna break that down for you here in the next couple of days as well,
Yeah.
and talk to you
But
about
mark
what
my
they were
words.
referencing,
Yeah. Mark my
because 'cause they're
words, until
referencing
the end of
scripture that you've
time.
probably never read unless you've read the
Right.
Book of Mormon, so
Lots of scriptures, yeah. Well, but mark
yeah.
my words right now. From now until the end of time, anytime someone pisses me off, they are core horror to me.
Core, yeah, I'm loving that,
Yeah.
I'm totally using that. Mhm.
That is too much.
Totally. Well, thank you for hanging out here with us, and as always, we appreciate you listening and being present, and we will be back tomorrow with more updates on what is happening in the Daybell Vallow case. So this has been True Crime Paranormal with the Psychic Sisters. I'm Kristi Brower, here with my co-host,
Katie
Katie
Weaver.
Weaver. So
Thanks
thanks,
for being here,
everybody.
guys.
Have
Take
a good
care.
night.